Welcome to another episode of the Tech Collector. This episode we're going to be doing a review of 3 different headphones, the entire lineup of the Spirit Torino line. These are very interesting headphones out of Italy. They're basically solid blocks of aluminum milled to a headphone. They're kind of like what would have happened if the HP series from Grado were still being made, or more particularly probably the PS1 series when you really listen to them. Got these as a loaner from Justin at Headphone Amp. Great place to do some shopping if you're into headphones and or headphone accessories. I can highly recommend the BHSE with a set of Omega headphones. Some of the best music that I have heard in my system came out of that particular system. We're going to go ahead and get right to this one and do a little bit of review and let you see all about the Spirit Torino line out of Italy. Let's get to this. As is required by review regulations, we start with the box. Packaging's nice. It's a nice black box. It's got foam to protect everything. The cables separate for most of these, so they kind of stay off here to the side. Headphones stay on this side. You got this nice little wood panel with their engraving on it, and you have this little USB thumb drive with some sample binaural recordings that they send out to give you a head start on your music for this headphone selection. First, we have the low-end headphone on this scale, and that's the Superleggera. It's a really good-looking headphone. It's red, aluminum. It's got the nice two-tone leather headband. Not really a whole lot to say. It looks like a beefed-up vintage Grado, and it kind of sounds sort of like that. Maybe a little bit of a bass-heavy PS1, which would be kind of hard to believe at one point, but that's about what I'm getting right now from this one. Next, we have the Radiante, the closed back headphone. This one in the 1706 pattern. Usually I'm a bit concerned with closed headphones. They always sound like they are closed, like the band recorded the album in a cave in a lot of poorly made cases. But this one actually sounds really good. It sounds like its siblings, just less soundstage and a little bit less bass. And finally, we have the big guy. This is the 1706 Twin Pulse. It's Ragnar is what it's called in other literature, but this is kind of the end-all do-all of what the Spirit Torino model can be. It's a big, very heavy headphone that, for the right music, can sound fantastic. I think out of the box, the family trait that describes all 3 of these would be bass monsters. But when you actually listen to them a bit, you're not gonna miss the bass. The bass is there. It's in your face. It's big, but the mid-range and uppers are not taking a complete backseat to the bass. They're still fairly well represented. They sound good, especially some of the male vocals. Female vocals, sound pretty decent as well, but they're definitely recessed, more than they should be recessed on a lot of the recordings I know very well. So when it really comes down to it, some things are very good with these. One of them might be live rock. You're 6 rows back from the big stack. This is what it feels like sometimes when you're listening to these headphones. If you play the right live album that's recorded very well, it's very realistic. That might be a very limited amount of music that you might listen to for such a great cost for these, but if you are someone that is buying $4,000 headphones, it's more likely that you probably have several of them in the collection. So if you want one that specializes in certain things, like live rock concerts, this one could be a good choice for you. Small ensemble would work as well, especially with those instruments that have the lower ranges. The lower range of a piano is very hard to get on headphones. It's very hard to get on speakers. You don't really get anything like being in the room with a large grand piano. The more bass you have, the more it can get close to that. And these headphones do pretty well. Some of the small ensemble stuff I listened to did the lower range of the piano well. It did not sound like a toy piano. And, you know, throughout the range of the piano, it sounded pretty well balanced. You could see there's definitely some emphasis on the lower register, but it's not bad. Yes, it actually does quite well with rock and roll, especially live rock and roll. Anybody that's been to a live rock and roll concert knows you get close enough to those speakers, you get the thump, you get the, you know, the vibration throughout the body. And that's kind of what this tries to represent, a very live atmosphere for something that's, you know, a very heavy musical emphasis. Big stack, you're about 12 rows back from the big stack at a big concert. And you kind of get that. I mean, it can be overpowering, but that's kind of how live concerts typically are when they're amplified. I wouldn't necessarily think it would be great for, you know, a small group acoustic. Well, it's still pretty good for that, but it's definitely not its strength like live rock really is. I'll admit I'm more of a vintage rap kind of guy, but it definitely does rap well. I mean, there's a lot to rap, but a lot of it is the emphasis on bass and mid-range, lower range vocals. And you get a lot of that in rap, and this one happens to do very well with that. All three of these happen to do very well with that. I think if I was going to buy, you know, a headphone for rap, yeah, it could certainly be one that I would consider, especially the two open ones. This one's been on the playlist quite a bit, especially on the outside system. It's a pretty good party song, especially in the time of quarantine. Her voice is very good on this particular recording. It's catchy as hell, and it's got good bass. It's not overpowered. You get a little bit of everything on this song, from instrumental to vocal to pretty good bass line, and pretty good test for the headphones for some of the new stuff that's out. It sounds really good. I mean, these do well for rap. If you're into rap, you know, especially these open ones would be a good idea. Playing audiophile music is mostly what I do. I have 12 terabytes of it on the NAS, and I have a lot of DSD. I have all high res. I've pretty much upgraded my whole collection several times now to be able to have the latest level of whatever high res or high audiophile style of the music may be. And this one, really, there's no complaints. It all comes down to the same type of things we've already talked about with the type of music and how well that plays into these particular headphones. They are not neutral by any stretch of the imagination, but they are fun. And fun audiophile music is awesome with these. Something that you really want to pay attention and have perfect balance to the mid-range, to the uppers, to the lows. You might not be looking at this type of headphone for that. But if you're looking to enjoy music and have fun listening to it, yeah, I can't really complain about these. They do very well in that regard. Listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan's Tin Pan Alley in 2496, and there's very little more audiophile in my book than this particular track. Recorded fantastically and on a good system. This thing jumps out. The dynamics are out of this world. They're not quite world class on this particular headphone. I'm doing the regular Superleggera here. Not the dynamics that I would typically expect from my much bigger stereo systems. But yeah, it's definitely enjoyable. It works. It's got the audiophile requirements of a decent sounding body to the guitar. Vocals are good. The bass line's not really overpowering with the Superleggeras. They're not as bassy as the big ones, but yeah, sounds pretty good. It actually does really well for some classical, and in that I mean kind of the small ensemble that has fairly bass heavy instruments. The piano, the lower register of the piano is fantastic with this particular setup. And you do have a little bit of cutout there in the middle as you go up the piano, but for a headphone that's able to play the full range of a piano, it's fairly rare, and I think it's actually pretty good at doing that. It still has some of the, I did a little review on a couple of classical small ensembles that had cello, violin, and piano, and the violin was definitely not as strong or as far forward in the mix as the other two, but it actually sounded good. It was perfectly acceptable, if not very good at this particular type of music. Large format classical, you can get, the timpani, and you can get some of the bass that just kind of overpowers some of the more delicate instruments. So I don't know that it would be my go-to for, true classical headphone, but for certain aspects of classical, it could do it very well. Decided I wanted to try a kind of a small ensemble classical with good piano and lower registers from the cello, doing the Cello Sonata number 2 in F major. And in this small ensemble, the overpowering bass that's in a lot of music that makes it more like a live concert works really well. It fills in the lower registers of the piano very accurately, more accurately than a lot of headphones do. But it still has a little bit of the liveliness up high with the violin, and you get a little bit out of it. It's a little bit set back, I would say, in the mix, but for this particular setup, I think this would be another of the strengths of the big Ragnar Twin Pulse 1706. How about something completely different? We'll go in to the new Body Count album. I've been wanting to try this one out. It's the remake of his classic Colors with his new band. Get some metal in here. I think this is going to be a great one for metal. It's got a lot of drive. It does pretty well at separating all the instruments. Some of these that I've listened to with this that are very complicated albums, they break it out and they make it pretty good. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the original Colors, so listen to this one. I want to try this with their mid-level headphone now to see. They seem to be very different in both sensitivity and really soundstage and level of bass. So I wanted to try out some of this with those and see what they sound like in comparison. For one, it's much louder. His voice is definitely more forward with these than it was with the 1706 headphone. This one's definitely got pitched up a little bit in the highs, which is good for the guitars, and the bass doesn't hit like it does on the 1706 Ragnar. So, I guess the $4,000 question is, would I buy any of these headphones? I guess the answer is it depends. If I was looking for a headphone to monitor, audio output from videos, then no, I'd end up with videos with zero bass in them if I tried to monitor with these headphones. If I was looking for headphones to listen to fun music and really rock out, listen to rap, listen to things that the bass line needs that hit to really, impart the music, then yeah, absolutely, I would look at them. The middle of the line one, the Radiante, I think would probably be a pretty decent all-around headphone. It's not as bombastic as the other two, and it's a little bit easier to tone down. I know a lot of people are using equalizers with these and getting good results. I didn't even bother with that because that's not what I'm doing here. If I had to pick one, just because it's my personality, I would buy the top of the line one. I'd buy the Twin Pulse. I found it fun. I enjoyed listening to it. It is heavy, but it's not going to be anything that's too dramatically uncomfortable. I probably would put that one into the collection for those times when I really wanted to rock out or I wanted just fun, because that's what this thing really excels at. Sounds good. I mean, it gets the mids and the highs very technically accurate. They're just a little bit recessed because there's so much bass in this particular line. So that's what we have. I would say, you know, depending upon what you listen to, depending upon what your budget is, I would say any one of these could fit very well into a collection. I would own any one of them, but if I had to pick one, I'd probably go the Twin Pulse just because it's crazy over the top, big, heavy, and the music is a bit, you know, over the top as well. So kind of like to have that in the collection, I would think. Hope you guys enjoyed this, found this informative, and we'll see you on the next one.